I spent years as a psychologist teaching people how to manage stress before I realized I wasn't following my own advice. I knew all the techniques, I understood the science, and I still ended most days exhausted. The books helped me see the problem, but they didn't change what I actually did. That's because knowing what to do and doing it are completely separate brain processes. In this video, I'll show you why your best insights fade so fast and the two simple changes that finally made me act on what I knew. You've probably had this experience. You're reading a book about stress management, or you're in a workshop, or you're talking with a friend late at night. Suddenly it hits you and you realize you need to set better boundaries. You need to stop checking email after dinner, and you need to take actual breaks instead of just thinking about them. You feel clear. You feel motivated, and you tell yourself that this time things will be different. Then Monday morning arrives. The old patterns are waiting for you. Your inbox is full, your calendar is packed, and someone needs something from you before you've even had your coffee. By Wednesday, that brilliant realization from Sunday night feels like it happened to someone else. You're back to the same habits, the same exhaustion, and the same story about how you'll fix it next week. I lived this loop for years. As a psychologist and coach, I understood stress inside and out. I could explain the nervous system, I could map the cognitive patterns, and I could teach every technique in the book. But understanding my stress didn't stop me from working until 11 p.m. It didn't stop me from saying yes to every request. It didn't stop me from falling into bed, too tired to move, and then doing it all again the next day. The part that hurt the most was the self-blame. I thought that because I knew better, I should do better. I thought the gap between my insight and my behavior meant something was wrong with me. Maybe I lacked discipline, or maybe I wasn't trying hard enough, or maybe I just didn't want it badly enough. But here's what the research makes clear. When you have a powerful realization, your brain produces a brief burst of electrical activity in the right temporal cortex. Scientists call this the gamma burst, and it feels transformative in the moment, but that burst is short-lived. Without a behavioral follow-through, the new neural pattern competes with old habits that have years of reinforcement behind them. The old pathways are stronger, they're more efficient, and they win every time you're tired, stressed, or busy. This is not a willpower problem, and it's not a character flaw. It is a brain design problem. And that means it needs a completely different kind of solution. The answer is not inside your head. The answer is in your environment and in the tiny actions you take before your brain has time to talk you out of them. Your brain handles insight and habits through completely different systems, and understanding this difference explains why your best intentions keep slipping away. Insight happens in your flexible cortical networks. These are the thinking, reasoning, problem-solving parts of your brain. When you read a book and suddenly see your situation clearly, or when a coach says something that clicks, that's your cortex making new connections. It feels powerful because it is. But the cortex is built for understanding, not for automatic action. Habits live in a much older and deeper part of your brain called the basal ganglia. This system doesn't care about insight or understanding. It cares about repetition. Every time you check your email first thing in the morning, or say yes when you should say no, or work through lunch again, you strengthen a neural pathway. The basal ganglia wraps that behavior into an automatic routine. Over time, it runs that routine with almost no conscious effort. This clicked for me when I stopped judging myself and started mapping my own habits honestly. I started writing down what I actually did during a stressful day, not what I planned to do. The gap was shocking. I was checking my phone over 50 times a day without realizing it, and every single check reinforced the same automatic loop. I realized I wasn't failing to act on my insights. My basal ganglia was simply running the programs I'd practiced for years. And those programs were winning because they had thousands of repetitions behind them. Here's the part that changed everything for me. Research shows that the average new behavior takes about 66 days to become automatic. Some habits form faster, around 18 days. Others take much longer, up to 254 days, depending on how complex they are and how consistent you are. But the critical point is that habits form through repetition in stable contexts, not through understanding. Your old stress habits have been running for years, maybe decades. They are deeply chunked into automatic sequences. The basal ganglia has packaged them into routines that fire instantly when a cue appears. A notification pings, and your hand reaches for the phone before you even think. A client emails, and you drop everything to respond before you can decide if it's actually urgent. These are not decisions. They are automatic habits that have been practiced thousands of times. Now consider what happens when you have an insight. Your cortex lights up, you see the pattern, and you make a plan. But that insight is a single event. It hasn't been repeated, it hasn't been grouped into automatic steps, and it hasn't been tied to a specific cue in your daily routine. So when Monday morning brings its usual flood of demands, your basal ganglia simply runs the old program because that's what it's designed to do. The insight is still in your cortex, but it's isolated. It's what scientists call a semantic island, which means you know it in theory, but it's not wired into your behavior. The switching system that lets you override habits with conscious intention lives in your orbitofrontal cortex. This is the part of your brain that says, wait, maybe I shouldn't check email at midnight. But here's the problem for entrepreneurs and busy professionals. Chronic stress weakens this switching system. The more stressed you are, the harder it becomes to interrupt your automatic habits with conscious choice. So the very people who need to change their stress habits the most are neurologically disadvantaged when trying to do so through willpower alone. That means willpower isn't just unreliable. For stressed entrepreneurs, it's actively fighting against a brain system that's already compromised. Dopamine is the other piece of this puzzle. When you repeat a behavior and get a reward, dopamine strengthens the neural pathway. That's why checking your phone feels satisfying even when you know you shouldn't. Your old habits have strong dopamine reinforcement. Insight does not. A single realization does not release enough dopamine to build a new pathway. Only repeated action paired with a consistent cue and a small reward can do that. So, expecting insight to change your behavior is like expecting a single spark to heat your house. The spark is real and bright, but it fades quickly. What you need is a steady fire, and steady fires are built by stacking small pieces of wood in the right arrangement. Your environment is the arrangement, and your tiny actions are the kindling. Once I stopped trying to think my way out of stress and started changing my surroundings, everything shifted. That's environmental design, and it's based on a simple rule. Make good habits easy and make bad habits hard. Your brain is lazy in the best possible way. It wants to conserve energy, and that means it defaults to whatever behavior takes the least effort in any given moment. If your water bottle is on your desk, you'll drink more water without thinking about it. If your phone charger is in the kitchen instead of your bedroom, you'll check your phone less at night without needing discipline. If your workout clothes are laid out where you can see them, you're more likely to move your body in the morning. The research on this is striking. Habits are context behavior associations. They get stronger when they're repeated in the same stable environment. But the reverse is also true. When you change the cues in your environment, you can change your behavior even without consciously deciding to. Researchers call this choice architecture, and it means the way you arrange your space determines what you do more than your motivation does. Let me give you some concrete examples that work for busy women running businesses and managing families. Keep a full water bottle at every location where you spend time. Your desk, your kitchen counter, the table where you answer emails. Place healthy food at eye level in your refrigerator. And put treats in opaque containers on a lower shelf where you can't see them. Move social media apps off your phone's home screen, or even better, log out after each use so you need to type your password to get back in. I started leaving a full glass of water on my kitchen counter every evening, and within a week I was drinking twice as much without a single reminder on my phone. The cue was simply there when I walked into the room. Create specific spaces for specific behaviours. A work zone, a relaxed zone, and if possible, a tiny self-care corner that signals permission to take care of yourself. Even a small mat in the corner of your living room can become a cue for 5 minutes of stretching. Your brain learns to associate locations with actions. A dedicated space makes the desired behaviour feel legitimate instead of like something you're squeezing in around everything else. This matters especially for women because the cognitive load of household coordination and caregiving drains the exact mental bandwidth that willpower-based strategies require. Studies consistently show that women carry more of the invisible mental labor for families. That means you have fewer cognitive resources left at the end of the day for forcing yourself to do the right thing. Environmental design doesn't rely on your remaining energy. It works while you're tired because it removes the decision entirely. When the healthy food is already prepped and visible, you don't need to decide what to eat. When the yoga mat is already laid out, you don't need to decide whether to exercise. When the phone is already in another room, the decision is already made for you. Your digital environment counts just as much as your physical one. Use grayscale mode on your phone after 8 p.m. to reduce the visual appeal of apps. Turn off all non-essential notifications so your attention isn't hijacked 50 times a day. Create focus profiles on your devices that limit app access during your most important work hours or during family time. The mistake most people make is thinking they need to overhaul their entire life at once. You don't. One environmental change maintained consistently will shift your behavior more than 100 insights ever could. And once you see that change working, you'll understand something important. Your behavior is not determined by your understanding. It's determined by your surroundings and the cues they send you every single day. But environment design only sets the stage. You still need a way to start the behavior before your old habits grab the wheel. That's where the 3-second rule comes in. The gap between having a good intention and acting on it is where most change attempts die. You think I should stretch, and within seconds your brain starts negotiating. You're too busy, you'll do it later, one day off won't matter. That negotiation is your basal ganglia defending its territory. The 3-second rule exists to bypass that negotiation entirely. Here's how it works. When the thought "I should" appears, you have about 3 seconds before your old habit system reasserts control. In that window, you take one tiny physical action. You don't plan the full routine, and you don't decide whether you feel like it. You simply move. The thought that you should drink more water becomes picking up the bottle. The idea that you should stop working becomes closing the laptop lid. The realization that you should move your body becomes standing up and touching your toes. This works because action generates prediction errors and rewards. When you do the behavior, your brain updates its model of what happens next. If the behavior feels good or even just neutral, your brain logs it as a successful experiment. Each tiny action strengthens the new neural pathway and weakens the old one. Without action, the insight remains isolated in your cortex. With action, even tiny action, it starts to connect to your motor system and your habits. Now let me show you exactly how this connects to environmental design. The water bottle on your desk removes the search step, so your 3-second action is just picking it up. The yoga mat already waiting in your living room means you don't need to find it first, and your 3-second action is just stepping onto it. The phone in the kitchen makes the 3-second action possible because you have to physically get up to retrieve it, which breaks the automatic reach and scroll sequence. Habit stacking is another powerful way to use this rule. You attach a new tiny action to an existing habit that already runs automatically. After you pour your morning coffee, you take your vitamins. After you put the kids to bed, you spend 5 minutes on the mat that's already waiting for you. After you commute home, you take a 10-minute walk before you enter full domestic mode. The existing habit becomes the cue, and the 3-second rule becomes the trigger that launches the new behavior before your brain can object. The perfectionism trap is what stops most entrepreneurs from using this. You tell yourself that if you can't do 30 minutes of yoga, it's not worth doing 2 minutes. You convince yourself that if you can't meditate for 20 minutes, you shouldn't bother at all. But 2 minutes of stretching beats 0 minutes of meditation every single time. 2 minutes builds the neural pathway. 0 minutes leaves the old habit in complete control. Behavioural triggers work because they bypass the deliberation phase and activate your motor system directly. When you count to 3 and move, you don't give your old habits time to mount a defense. You're not negotiating with your stress patterns. You're simply moving, and that movement starts to rewire what your brain does automatically. The key is to make the first action so small that it feels almost silly to skip it. Your first action might be 1 sip of water, 1 deep breath, or 1 step away from your desk. These actions are so tiny that your brain can't justify avoiding them. And because they're so small, you can do them even when you're exhausted, even when you're overwhelmed, and even when you don't believe anything will change. You now have 2 pieces that work together. Environmental design makes the right behavior the easiest choice in the room. The 3-second rule makes sure you actually choose it before your old habits wake up. Let me walk you through what this looks like in practice for a typical week. Pick one behavior you already know you want to change. Maybe it's checking email after 9 p.m. Maybe it's skipping lunch. Maybe it's sitting at your desk for 6 hours without moving. Just pick one. Now change your environment to support that behavior. If you want to stop checking email at night, plug your phone into a charger in the kitchen at 9 p.m. and leave it there. To take lunch breaks, put a reminder card on your monitor and prep your food the night before so it's ready without any morning effort. If you want to move more during the day, place a resistance band on your desk chair where you'll see it every time you sit down. Then pick your 3-second trigger. The moment the thought appears, you move. The moment you feel the urge to check your phone in bed, you reach for the book on your nightstand instead. The moment you feel tension in your shoulders during a meeting, you take 1 sip from your water bottle and 1 breath. The moment you finish a task, you stand up and stretch for 10 seconds before you start the next one. When I first tried this, my one change was moving my phone out of my bedroom. I had read all the research about sleep and blue light and I understood it perfectly, but I still scrolled in bed every night. The insight wasn't enough. What changed everything was the physical act of walking to the kitchen to plug in my phone. That 10-second walk broke the automatic habit, and within a few weeks, my evenings started to feel different. I started reading again, I fell asleep faster. And I woke up without that heavy feeling of having wasted my night on nothing. I wasn't more disciplined. I just made the bad habit harder and gave myself a tiny physical action to replace it. This is where identity starts to shift. When you act, even in the smallest way, you begin to see yourself differently. You're no longer someone who knows what to do but can't follow through. You become someone who closes the laptop at 9 p.m. You become someone who stands up and stretches between tasks. You become someone who follows through, not because you're stronger than before, but because you built a system that doesn't require strength. The biggest mistake is trying to change 5 things at once. Research on habit formation shows that complexity and consistency matter more than ambition. 1 environmental tweak and 1 3-second trigger practiced daily will create more change than a complete life overhaul that lasts 3 days. Start small, start specific, and start now. Insight shows you where to go, but only your environment and your first small action can get you there. In the next video, I'll show you how to build a morning routine that protects your energy, before the demands of the day hit. Let me know in the comments what one environmental change you're making this week.